Your subconscious mind is always listening. It has never stopped listening. From the moment you first drew breath to this precise instant, it has been receiving every impression you have ever given it. Every image, every repeated feeling, every habitual assumption about who you are and what is possible for you. But here is what most people who have studied this science for years still do not fully understand. The subconscious does not obey the words you shout in panic. It does not respond to the loudness of your desire or the desperation of your need. It responds to the state that underlies your words, the dominant emotional impression that your nervous system is broadcasting at the moment of contact. You can say the words, "I am safe, I am wealthy, I am healed," with complete linguistic precision. And if your body is trembling with desperation, if your imagination is quietly rehearsing disaster, if your chest is tight with the unspoken certainty that things will not work out, then the subconscious receives a different command entirely. It receives the command of panic, and it executes that command with the same faithful, impersonal precision with which it would execute any other. Joseph Murphy spent decades teaching this distinction, and it remains to this day the most misunderstood law in the entire science of mind. Panic cannot command the deep mind. Peace can. If you have been practicing affirmations, visualization, or prayer for any serious length of time, and you are watching this, there is a strong possibility that you have experienced something deeply discouraging. You have done the work. You have said the words. You have tried to hold the images. You may have done this faithfully, consistently, even sacrificially, and yet you have felt, not improvement, but a peculiar worsening, a tightening, a sense that the very act of trying to impress your subconscious was pressing you harder into the awareness of what was wrong. You affirmed abundance, and the bills on the table seemed louder. You affirmed health, and the symptoms seemed more present. You affirmed peace, and the anxiety seemed to increase as if in direct proportion to your effort. This is not a spiritual failure. This is a mechanical error. And the mechanism that is misfiring is not your faith. It is the emotional state in which you have been approaching the subconscious mind. The pain of this position is specific. It is not the pain of someone who never tried. It is the pain of someone who tried with everything they had, who invested not just time, but genuine belief that the law was real, who kept going when others stopped, and who now sits with a private question that feels almost too dangerous to ask. What if I have been doing this wrong all along? That question is not a sign of weakness. It is the sign of a precision thinker. It is the diagnostic instinct recognizing that something structural is not aligned. And the answer to that question is not more effort. The answer is a correction in method. Not more force, more peace. That is what this teaching is designed to install. Not as an abstract virtue, but as a precise operating technique for impressing the subconscious mind the way Joseph Murphy actually described. The promise of what follows is not that your problems will vanish. The promise is something more durable than that. The promise is that you will understand, perhaps for the first time with genuine clarity, why the subconscious responds to certain states and resists others, why calm is not weakness but command, and why the most powerful impression you can give the deep mind is not a frantic shout from a place of need, but a quiet, settled decree from a place of inner authority. Murphy called this relaxed faith. He described it not as spiritual passivity, but as the correct operating posture of the trained mind. When you understand why this is mechanically true and not merely philosophically pleasant, the entire practice of working with the subconscious mind changes. It becomes quieter, more precise, and far more effective. This video is a correction. It is not an introduction to subconscious law. You have already been introduced. It is not a motivation to try harder. Harder is exactly what has not been working. This is a recalibration of method, a return to what Murphy actually taught, beneath the simplified versions that circulate in popular culture, and beneath the enthusiastic but imprecise instruction that has led so many serious practitioners into the exhausting loop of anxious affirmation. What you will receive here is a structured understanding of why peace is the correct command state, how to enter it deliberately, how to impress the subconscious through it, and what specific errors have been quietly undermining your practice without your awareness. By the end of this teaching, you will not merely feel better about your practice, you will understand it differently at the architectural level. Before we go further, there is one action available to you now that is not symbolic. It is operative. Write the words "peace commands my mind" in the comments below. Not as a reaction to this video, not as a casual reply. Write it as a decree. Write it as the first conscious instruction you are issuing to your own subconscious from a place of deliberate recognition. The act of naming the law before you have fully received it is itself a form of subconscious impression. And if this curriculum of precision is what you have been searching for, if you sense that what is taught here builds on itself, that each law connects to the next, and that returning here by accident is not sufficient for the level of mastery you are seeking, then remain in this laboratory. Subscribe now, not as a favor to the channel, but as a declaration to your own deep mind that you have chosen to operate at this level of understanding. Now, let us begin the diagnosis. Joseph Murphy's foundational principle, the one that underlies every technique he ever taught, is this: the subconscious mind is a law of belief. It does not evaluate. It does not argue. It does not distinguish between what is literally true and what is vividly imagined and emotionally accepted. What it receives as dominant impression, it moves toward expression. This is not metaphor. This is the operating principle of the deep mind as Murphy understood it, drawing from decades of study in autosuggestion, hypnotic science, religious healing traditions, and the documented results of prayer therapy. The subconscious is not a wish fulfillment machine that rewards sincerity. It is a receiving and executing mechanism that responds to the quality and character of what is impressed upon it. And the primary medium of impression is not words, it is feeling. Murphy was precise about this. He described the subconscious as being like fertile soil. The conscious mind is the gardener. What the gardener plants, the soil grows, without preference, without judgment, without resistance. The soil does not evaluate whether the seed is a flower or a weed. It executes growth according to the pattern it receives. This means that the subconscious is magnificently impartial. It will grow fear with the same faithful consistency with which it will grow faith. It will express limitation with the same precision with which it expresses abundance. The question is never whether the law is working. The law is always working. The question is what you are actually impressing upon it, beneath the words you are consciously selecting. This is where most practitioners make their first fundamental error. They believe they are impressing the subconscious with their words. They select positive, precise, spiritually elevated words, and they repeat them with considerable effort. But Murphy taught that words alone are carriers, vehicles. They become operative only when accompanied by genuine feeling, which he defined as the emotional tone of mental acceptance. The feeling he described was not excitement or enthusiasm or the elevated emotion of peak experience. It was something quieter and more durable. It was the feeling of completion, the feeling of the thing already having been received. The feeling, however brief, of settled knowing rather than effortful wishing. He described this state using a number of terms across his body of work. He called it relaxed faith. He called it quiet certainty. He described it as the state in which the conscious critical faculty relaxes its resistance and the subconscious becomes genuinely receptive to new impression. And he was emphatic that this state could not be forced. It had to be entered. It had to be cultivated with the same deliberate care with which a musician cultivates tone or a surgeon cultivates steadiness of hand. The capacity to enter a state of relaxed inner authority is itself a skill, and it is precisely the skill that most anxious practitioners have never been taught to develop. Consider what Murphy actually described when he spoke of prayer therapy. He did not describe prayer as petitioning an external deity in a state of desperate need. He described it as a specific mental operation in which the practitioner moves from the surface level of circumstance awareness into a deeper level of spiritual acceptance, a level at which the desired condition is internally real before it is externally visible. He called this treatment. The word is deliberate. A treatment is not a wish. A treatment is a directed, skilled application of principle to a specific condition. And the medium through which the treatment operates is not volume or emotional intensity. It is depth. Depth of acceptance, depth of inner conviction, depth of felt completion. Murphy drew heavily on the work of Emile Coué, who taught that the imagination always wins over the will when the two are in conflict. This is a law of extraordinary precision. When you are trying, through sheer willpower, to believe something that your imagination is simultaneously depicting as false or dangerous, the imagination wins. Every time. Not sometimes. Every time. This means that the person who says, "I am abundant," while their inner image is one of scarcity, is not giving the subconscious a mixed message. They are giving it a clear message, the message of the imagination, which is the more powerful of the two inputs. The willful repetition of the affirmation against the backdrop of an imaginative picture of lack does not produce abundance. It produces the impression of fighting against lack, and the subconscious, obediently and precisely, reproduces the condition of fighting against lack in the outer experience. This is not a peripheral point. This is the central mechanical explanation for why so many experienced practitioners, people who understand the law intellectually, who have read Murphy and Holmes and Goddard and Shin, who have practiced consistently and seriously, have nonetheless found their outer circumstances stubbornly unresponsive. They have been operating the machine incorrectly, not through lack of effort, through an excess of it. They have been shouting commands at a mechanism that requires quiet instructions. They have been applying pressure to a process that requires permission. They have been fighting when they needed to be receiving. Murphy's solution to this was not more sophisticated technique. It was a fundamental shift in operating posture. He taught that the approach to the subconscious must be characterized above all by a quality he described repeatedly as natural, easy, and relaxed. These words appear throughout his writing not as casual suggestions, but as precise operational requirements. Natural means that the impression must feel organic and true, not forced and artificial. Easy means that the process must be free of strain, because strain is itself an impression of difficulty that the subconscious will faithfully execute. Relaxed means that the conscious mind must release its grip on the outcome, not because the outcome does not matter, but because that grip is itself a form of doubt, a form of saying by its very tension that the thing is not yet secure. The deeper logic of this becomes apparent when you consider what Murphy called autosuggestion. He used this term to describe the process by which any suggestion, positive or negative, is accepted by the subconscious and given objective reality. The prefix auto is significant. It means self. You are not being suggested to by an external hypnotist. You are the one giving the suggestion. You are both the practitioner and the subject. And this means that the emotional quality of how you approach yourself in this process is determinative. If you approach your own subconscious with urgency, desperation, and the implicit message that things are very wrong and must be fixed immediately, you are giving it a highly specific autosuggestion. You are suggesting that the situation is dire, that the condition is threatening, and that the outcome is uncertain. And the subconscious, obedient and impersonal as it is, accepts that suggestion and expresses it outwardly. Murphy frequently described the relationship between the conscious and subconscious minds using the model of the captain and the crew. The conscious mind is the captain. The subconscious mind is the crew that executes orders. But Murphy was always careful to add a dimension that is often overlooked in popular summaries of his work. The crew does not respond well to a captain who is visibly panicking. A captain on the bridge who is shouting incoherently, issuing and then retracting orders, and radiating terror does not inspire confident execution. The crew, the subconscious, in such a case, executes the emotional state of the captain, not the verbal content of the orders. Therefore, the quality of command is not determined by what the captain says. It is determined by the state from which the captain says it. This means that peace, genuine, cultivated, operational inner peace, is not a spiritual luxury available only to those whose problems are already solved. It is a requirement for effective subconscious programming. It is the correct signal state. When you approach the subconscious from a foundation of inner calm, you are not pretending that problems do not exist. You are choosing to operate from a level of consciousness that is above the level of the problem. And it is precisely from that higher level that the subconscious receives its most potent and lasting impressions. Murphy was not teaching complacency, he was teaching command. And command in the science of mind as he understood it is always issued from peace. The practical implications of this are significant and often counterintuitive for the experienced practitioner. They suggest that the most productive thing you can do before any affirmation practice is not to choose better words. It is to establish the correct inner state. They suggest that a single minute of genuine, settled, emotionally accepted inner instruction is worth more than 30 minutes of anxious repetition. They suggest that the measure of effectiveness in subconscious work is not how hard you tried, but how deeply you accepted. Not how many times you said it, but how real it felt when you said it. Not how determined you were, but how calm you were while being determined. Murphy also emphasized the critical importance of imagery working in alignment with the verbal instruction. He taught that the subconscious responds to mental pictures with particular vividness, that it treats a clearly held inner image as current reality and moves toward its expression. This means that the practitioner who affirms healing while internally imaging a failing body is not just failing to heal. They are actively programming the condition of illness more deeply into the subconscious pattern. The image is the more powerful language, and the image is almost always a direct expression of the emotional state that underlies it. When the emotional state is one of fear, the images that arise spontaneously are images of threat, failure, and loss. When the emotional state is one of peace, the images that arise, or that can be deliberately selected and held, are images of order, sufficiency, and completion. This brings us to the governing principle of everything that follows in this teaching. It is stated simply and with the precision of a law. The subconscious does not respond to the words you say. It responds to the state you are in when you say them. Change the state, and the same words carry an entirely different command. Enter the state of panic, and even the most spiritually elevated affirmation carries the message of panic. Enter the state of peace, the state Murphy meant when he spoke of relaxed faith. And even the simplest statement of truth carries with it the full authority of a subconscious command. Peace is not the reward you receive when the subconscious has obeyed. Peace is the condition under which the subconscious obeys. This is the central law of this entire teaching, and everything that follows is an elaboration of its practical application. The logic of this principle becomes undeniable when you apply it to any system you already understand. Consider the analogy of a highly sensitive industrial control machine, one that regulates an enormously complex process and responds to input signals with extraordinary precision. This machine does not respond to volume. It responds to signal quality. If you approach the control panel in a state of agitation and begin slamming the controls, shouting contradictory commands, and pressing buttons in rapid, unpredictable sequence, the machine does not interpret your urgency as authority. It interprets your input as noise. Contradictory signals produce contradictory outputs, or no coherent output at all. The machine is not being stubborn, it is being precisely accurate. It is giving you exactly what your inputs describe. Now consider the same machine approached by a skilled operator who has worked with it for years. This operator does not shout. They do not slam controls. They approach the panel with quiet familiarity. They make one deliberate adjustment, verify the signal, and allow the system to respond. The machine, receiving a clear, coherent, uncontradicted signal, executes the desired operation with smooth precision. The difference between the two operators is not intelligence. It is not even knowledge. It is composure. It is the quality of the state from which the instructions are issued. The machine is identical in both cases. The only variable is the operator's inner condition. This is precisely the analogy Murphy was drawing when he described the approach to the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is, by every account that Murphy and his contemporaries gave us, an obedient mechanism of extraordinary power. It does not question, it does not evaluate, it does not resist. What it does is execute, and it executes what it receives as dominant impression with a faithfulness that is both its greatest gift and its greatest danger. The danger lies precisely in this. Most people, because they do not understand the law of dominant impression, assume that their most recent and most earnest verbal instruction is what the subconscious receives. They do not realize that beneath that verbal instruction, Running constantly and silently like a deep current is the emotional atmosphere of their habitual state. And it is that habitual state, not the carefully selected affirmation of the morning practice, that constitutes the dominant impression. This is why Murphy's teaching always returns to the question of habit. Not the habit of what you say, but the habit of what you feel. The habitual emotional tone of your inner life is the single most powerful ongoing impression you are giving the subconscious. If that habitual tone is one of mild but constant anxiety, the low-grade hum of worry that is so familiar it no longer even registers as worry, then that is the dominant impression, and the subconscious is faithfully and continuously executing it. Every affirmation you add to that foundation is not replacing the dominant impression, it is being evaluated against it. And because the dominant impression has been present for years, while the affirmation has been present for minutes or months, the dominant impression wins. Not because it is stronger in principle, but because it has been impressed more deeply, more repeatedly, and with far more emotional consistency. It follows from this that the correction cannot be achieved by adding more affirmations on top of the existing emotional foundation. Adding peaceful words to an anxious inner state is like placing a fresh coat of paint over a crumbling wall. The paint does not fix the structure, it conceals it temporarily. The structural issue, the habitual emotional atmosphere, remains operative beneath the new surface. And the subconscious, which reads structure, not surface, continues to execute the crumbling wall. Murphy's approach addresses the structure. It addresses the emotional atmosphere directly, teaching the practitioner not to paint over their fear with faith language, but to actually enter a different state, however briefly, in which the subconscious receives a genuine new impression. The logic of this is further supported by what we know about the mechanics of suggestion, not in the vague popular sense, but in the precise clinical sense that Murphy studied. A suggestion takes hold when the critical faculty of the conscious mind is bypassed, and the idea is accepted directly by the deeper mind without argument or resistance. Murphy was acutely aware of this. He taught that the critical faculty, the analytical, evaluating, comparing function of the conscious mind, is a gatekeeper. It stands between the surface input and the subconscious soil. In ordinary waking consciousness, especially in a state of anxious alert, this gatekeeper is highly active. It is screening every input, comparing it against what it already believes to be true, and rejecting anything that conflicts with the established pattern. This is why affirmations delivered in an ordinary waking state, against a backdrop of anxious belief in the opposite, are so frequently ineffective. The gatekeeper is awake, armed, and actively filtering. Murphy's solution was elegant in its simplicity. Do not fight the gatekeeper. Instead, wait for it to step aside. There are specific states in which the gatekeeper naturally relaxes. Most notably, the hypnagogic state at the threshold of sleep, and the hypnopompic state in the first moments of waking. In these states, the conscious critical faculty is quiet, the subconscious is accessible, and impressions delivered with any genuine feeling sink directly into the deep mind without resistance. Murphy called this threshold programming, and he considered it among the most powerful techniques available to the practitioner. Not because of any mystical property of these moments, but because of their precise mechanical advantage. The gatekeeper is quiet, the soil is receptive, and the seed can be planted cleanly. This also explains why the emotional state during practice is so operationally significant. When the body is tense, the nervous system is in a state of alert. Physiologically, this state is designed for threat detection and rapid response, not for learning, receiving, or deep impression. The mind in a state of threat response is the mind of the anxious affirmation practitioner, scanning for danger, checking for results, evaluating whether the technique is working, and generating a continuous stream of counter-evidence from current experience. In this state, even the most powerful spiritual truth cannot penetrate deeply, because the very machinery that would receive it is occupied with threat management. Calm the nervous system, and you calm the gatekeeper. You create the conditions under which genuine new impression becomes mechanically possible. Murphy's teaching on what he called the relaxed state is therefore not a suggestion about comfort. It is a technical specification. Relaxing before and during subconscious work is not about making the experience pleasant. It is about making the impression possible. The relaxed state is the state of genuine receptivity, the state in which the deep mind is open, the gatekeeper is quiet, and the feeling of the desired condition can be impressed without the noise of conscious resistance contaminating the signal. Every technique Murphy taught, from bedtime prayer to affirmative treatment to the use of mental imagery, is designed to be executed from this state. Not from desperation, not from urgency, not from the effort of trying to overcome fear with words, from peace. Consider also the nature of the feeling that Murphy specified as the carrier of subconscious impression. He was not describing excitement. He was not describing the heightened emotional state of a peak spiritual experience. He described the feeling of completed prayer, the sense, even if momentary, that the thing is already done. He drew on the teaching of Jesus in the Gospel of Mark, where the instruction is given to believe that you have received and you shall receive. Murphy interpreted this as a precise technical instruction about the subjective state required for effective subconscious impression. The belief that you have already received is not a future orientation. It is a present inner state. It is the felt sense of completion in the present moment. The emotional reality of the desired condition being treated as already established. And this feeling, however brief and however imperfect its first expression, constitutes a qualitatively different impression than the feeling of desperate wanting. The distinction Murphy drew here is worth dwelling on at length because it is the exact distinction that most practitioners have never fully internalized. Wanting is a feeling of absence. No matter how earnestly you want something good, the feeling of wanting implies that the good is not yet present, and the subconscious, receiving the impression of the good's absence, faithfully expresses that absence in the outer world. Having, or the cultivated inner sense of having, the feeling of completion, is a feeling of presence. It implies that the good is real, available, and already in some sense possessed. And the subconscious, receiving the impression of presence and completion, moves toward the expression of that presence in outer experience. This is why Murphy repeatedly emphasized that the goal of affirmative work is not to try harder, to want the good more intensely. It is to shift even briefly from the feeling of wanting into the feeling of having. And the state that makes that shift possible, the state that quiets the habitual voice of lack and opens the channel for the feeling of completion, is the state of genuine inner peace. The unshakable logic of this position rests on a principle that admits no exception. The subconscious is impersonal. It plays no favorites. It applies its law with the same fidelity to the person who fears poverty as to the person who claims abundance. It is not moved by the sincerity of your desire. It is moved by the consistency of your impression. This means that the person who has prayed and affirmed and visualized for years without result has not been unlucky. They have not been spiritually inadequate. They have been, without knowing it, consistently impressing the subconscious with something other than what they consciously intended, most often with the feeling of not yet, not enough, not certain. And the subconscious has executed that impression faithfully and without prejudice, producing the outer experience of not yet, not enough, and not certain. The correction is not emotional, it is structural. It is a change in the nature of the dominant impression, and the instrument of that change is not more effort, it is peace. The logic closes here with a statement of complete clarity. The subconscious is always obeying. The question that should occupy every serious practitioner is not whether it will obey, but what it is currently obeying. If the outer conditions of your life are not reflecting the truth you have been consciously affirming, the answer is not that the law has failed. The answer is that the law has succeeded, and it has succeeded in executing something other than your conscious intention. Something deeper, something more habitually felt, something that was impressed with greater consistency and emotional resonance than the words you carefully selected in your morning practice. To change the output, you must change the dominant impression. To change the dominant impression, you must change the state from which you approach the subconscious. And the state that Murphy prescribed, with the clarity of a scientist and the authority of a man who had seen this law prove itself in thousands of documented cases, is the state of relaxed, settled, operative peace. Before any technique is useful, a prior understanding must be established, one that many practitioners have never been given. It is this: peace is not a reward. It is not a destination. It is not the pleasant emotional byproduct you will enjoy after the subconscious has finally obeyed your commands and your outer conditions have improved. Peace is the operating posture from which the law functions correctly. It is a form of inner authority. In fact, it is the foundational form of inner authority available to the human mind. And until this is understood not merely as a philosophical preference, but as a mechanical requirement, the practitioner will continue to approach their subconscious from the wrong level, from the level of reaction rather than the level of command. Consider what inner calmness actually represents in terms of mental architecture. When the mind is calm, it is operating from what Murphy and others described as a higher level of consciousness, a level that is above the problem, above the condition, above the fear response that the outer situation naturally provokes. This higher level is not an escape from reality. It is a more accurate perception of reality. It is the level at which the practitioner recognizes that the outer condition is effect, not cause, that the visible circumstance is a reporting of what has already been impressed upon the subconscious, not a final decree about what must remain. From this higher level, the practitioner is not fighting the condition. They are working at the level of the cause, which is the inner state and its impression upon the deep mind. And to work at the level of cause requires the composure to stand above the evidence of the effect without being consumed by it. This is why Murphy so frequently described the spiritually mature practitioner as one who does not react. To react to an outer condition with panic is to treat the effect as if it were the cause, to allow the report to write the next story. The person who sees a threatening financial condition and immediately contracts into fear and urgent action is allowing the effect to determine the inner state, which then becomes the new cause, which then produces more of the same effect. This is the closed circuit of habitual limitation. The practitioner who understands the law does something that appears, to the ordinary mind, almost counterintuitive. They become still, not passive, not indifferent, not resigned, still. They deliberately withdraw from the emotional pull of the outer condition and establish from within the state that corresponds to the desired outcome rather than the current report. Murphy described this operation using language drawn from the Psalms. Be still and know that I am God. He did not interpret this as passive spiritual surrender. He interpreted it as a precise instruction about the mental operation required for effective subconscious impression. To be still is to stop the reactive, fear-driven inner chatter that is constantly impressing the subconscious with the evidence of what is wrong. To know is to move into a state of inner conviction, relaxed, settled, certain, that the infinite intelligence operative within you knows the way forward and is already active in producing it. This is not denial of difficulty. It is refusal to let difficulty be the commanding signal. It is a choice to operate from the level of cause rather than the level of effect. The practical implication of this is that cultivating inner peace is itself a spiritual practice. And it is, in Murphy's science, perhaps the most foundational practice of all. It precedes every other technique. It is more important than the specific words of your affirmation. It is more important than the precise imagery you choose to hold, because none of the other techniques function at their designed efficiency without it. You could have the most beautifully constructed prayer treatment ever composed, and if it is delivered from a state of inner panic, it will carry the signal of panic into the subconscious and produce the conditions of panic in the outer world. Whereas a single simple sentence, God is my sufficiency, delivered from a place of a genuine, settled inner calm, carries with it the full authority of a subconscious command and sinks into the deep mind like a seed into prepared soil. This also corrects one of the most damaging misunderstandings in popular spiritual teaching: the idea that emotional intensity is equivalent to spiritual power. Many practitioners have been taught, implicitly or explicitly, that the more intensely they feel their desire, the more powerfully they are impressing the subconscious. This leads to the exhausting practice of trying to generate high emotional states around the desired conditions, forcing excitement, manufacturing enthusiasm, straining to feel what they do not naturally feel. Murphy's actual teaching was almost precisely the opposite. Emotional intensity, when it arises from desire or fear, which it almost always does in the untrained mind, carries with it the impression of the very thing the practitioner is trying to overcome. Intense desire implies the powerful presence of the desired thing's absence. Intense fear of failure implies the powerful expectation of failure. The impression is not in the intensity. The impression is in the quality of the feeling. And the quality that Murphy specified, the feeling of completion, the sense that it is already done, is by nature a quiet feeling, a settled feeling, a feeling that does not shout because it has nothing to prove. Peace as spiritual authority also means that the practitioner who is genuinely calm in the face of adversity is not demonstrating weakness or defeat. They are demonstrating mastery of the law. They are showing by their composure that they are operating from the level of cause rather than the level of effect. This is difficult to achieve in the midst of genuine difficulty. A serious health challenge, a financial crisis, a relationship breakdown. Murphy never pretended otherwise. He did not suggest that the law is easy to operate under pressure. But he was absolutely clear that the law operates only in one direction, from the inner to the outer, from cause to effect, from the state of consciousness to the visible condition. And therefore, no matter how pressing the outer condition becomes, the practitioner's leverage, their only real point of productive action, lies in the quality of their inner state. Panic surrenders that leverage. Peace preserves it. There is also a deeper reason why peace constitutes spiritual authority, one that Murphy connected to his understanding of the nature of infinite intelligence itself. Murphy taught that the subconscious mind is the individual's connection point with the universal mind. The infinite intelligence that knows all, supplies all, and is continuously active in producing the conditions of life. This infinite intelligence, in Murphy's description, operates always through the channel of the greatest good and by the path of least resistance. It does not operate through force. It does not operate through anxiety. It operates through alignment, through the individual mind coming into harmony with a deeper current of intelligence supply that is always available. And that harmony requires the practitioner to be in a state that allows the infinite intelligence to flow through them, a state of receptivity, openness, and settled trust. That state is peace. It is not merely pleasant. It is the precise spiritual posture that allows the higher current to move. Without it, the channel is constricted by the noise of fear, and the flow of infinite intelligence into the individual circumstances is diminished not because the supply is insufficient, but because the receiving apparatus is blocked. Understanding peace as spiritual authority, rather than spiritual luxury, changes the entire architecture of practice. It means that before you select your affirmation, before you open the book, before you close your eyes to visualize, the first task is the cultivation of inner calm. This is not preparation for the real work. It is the real work. Everything else is an extension of it. The practitioner who learns to enter a state of genuine inner stillness, even for 60 seconds, even imperfectly, before issuing any instruction to the subconscious, has already accomplished the most important step. They have established the signal environment in which genuine impression is possible. They have quieted the gatekeeper. They have prepared the soil. And whatever simple, clear, emotionally accepted instruction they then issue from that state will sink into the deep mind with a penetrating power that no amount of frantic repetition from a state of panic could ever achieve. The question then becomes practical. How does one actually enter this state? Not philosophically, but operationally. How does a person who is facing a genuine crisis, who has real bills, real symptoms, real relational pain, move from the natural state of anxious reaction into the operating state of inner peace? This is where Murphy's specific techniques become essential. And what is notable about every technique he taught is that none of them require you to resolve the outer problem before you can begin. They all begin from exactly where you are. They begin from the anxious, uncertain, struggling state, and they provide a precise pathway from that state into the receptive, authoritative state of relaxed faith. The pathway is not long. In many cases, it is a matter of a few deliberate minutes, but it is a pathway that must be learned, practiced, and made habitual. Because peace, like any skill, becomes easier and faster to access with each repetition. And each time you access it genuinely and issue a clear inner command from its center, the subconscious receives a new impression, one that contradicts the pattern of panic and begins with the faithful impersonality of law to move toward a new expression in the outer world. This is the foundation. Peace is not the reward of practice. Peace is the practice. And from that peace, all genuine subconscious command becomes not only possible, but inevitable. What follows now is the precise architecture of how to build it, enter it, and use it as the operative instrument of subconscious law. The technique that Murphy's teaching implies, and that the following steps make explicit, is not a complicated ritual. It does not require an hour of preparation or any special equipment or any elevated spiritual condition that you must somehow deserve before accessing. It requires only a willingness to approach the subconscious differently than you have been approaching it, more quietly, more precisely, with less force and more felt acceptance. The following structure is a direct translation of Murphy's principles into a practical operating sequence. Each step has a reason. Each reason is grounded in the mechanics of how the subconscious actually receives impression. Do not skip the steps. Their sequence is itself part of the mechanism. The first step is this: regulate before you affirm. This instruction alone, if properly understood and consistently applied, has the capacity to transform a practice that has been producing anxiety into a practice that produces genuine impression. Before you say a single word to your subconscious, before you open your mouth or form a single mental sentence, you must first change your body's signal. Because the body is not separate from the mind. It is the physical expression of the current state of the subconscious. When the body is tense, the subconscious is in the signal of threat. When the body relaxes, even slightly, the signal begins to shift. Murphy understood this long before modern researchers documented it, and he consistently recommended that practitioners begin every session of inner work with deliberate physical relaxation. This does not mean 30 minutes of meditation, though that is available to you. It means a deliberate, conscious slowing of the breath. It means a conscious release of tension in the shoulders, the jaw, the hands, the chest. It means taking 2 or 3 slow, deep breaths with the deliberate intention of signaling to the nervous system that the emergency is not happening right now, in this moment, in this inner space. This simple act of physical regulation has a specific and measurable effect on the receptivity of the mind. As the body relaxes, the acute stress response diminishes. The inner chatter quiets slightly. The grip of the immediate problem loosens just enough to allow a different signal to enter. You are not trying to forget your problems. You are not trying to pretend that the condition does not exist. You are choosing, for this precise period of inner work, to step back from the level of the effect and establish yourself at the level of the cause. The physical relaxation is the mechanism by which you make that step. It is not symbolic, it is physiological. It changes the signal environment of the body and brain, and in doing so, it creates the conditions under which genuine subconscious impression becomes possible. Murphy called this entering the silence, and he meant it not as a mystical metaphor, but as an accurate description of the inner state that genuine receptivity requires. The second step is to choose one simple command. This is counterintuitive for the earnest practitioner who has accumulated a long list of affirmations across multiple life areas. But Murphy's understanding of the subconscious is precise on this point. The deep mind responds to simplicity and specificity far more readily than to complexity and volume. A long list of affirmations delivered rapidly, even from a state of relative calm, produces an impression of multiplicity and urgency, a signal that many things are wrong and must be fixed. One clear, simple statement, delivered from a state of genuine inner quiet, with a single focused feeling of acceptance, produces an impression of order, completeness, and sufficient truth. The statement does not need to be elaborate. In fact, the more elaborate it is, the more it engages the conscious, analytical mind rather than the receptive subconscious. Choose one sentence that captures the essential truth you want to impress. Divine order governs my life now is sufficient. Infinite intelligence supplies all that I need is sufficient. I am at peace, and peace is productive in me is sufficient. The criterion for a good command is not its theological sophistication. It is its simplicity, its felt truth, and its alignment with the emotional state of completion rather than the emotional state of need. This principle of simplicity is grounded in something Murphy observed repeatedly in his decades of counseling work. The people who experienced the most dramatic transformations through subconscious impression were rarely those who had the most elaborate prayer practices. They were those who had found one statement, one clear, simple, deeply accepted inner truth, and had impressed it with sufficient feeling and repetition to replace the habitual pattern of limitation. The elaborateness of the technique did not correlate with the depth of the result. The depth of the acceptance did. And depth of acceptance is easiest to achieve when the statement is simple enough to be genuinely felt rather than merely intellectually recited. The third step is to add a feeling of completion. This is the step that transforms a recitation into an impression. Murphy was emphatic that feeling is the language the subconscious understands most directly. Not the feeling of intense desire, but the feeling of completed reception. After you have entered a state of physical and mental quiet, after you have selected your one simple statement, you must do the work of moving from the recitation of the statement into the felt sense of its truth. This is not the same as pretending. It is not theatrical self-persuasion. It is a deliberate inner movement, a reaching below the level of current circumstance into the level of completed fact. You are accessing, even briefly, the feeling of the prayer already answered, the feeling of the condition already established in the substance of mind. Murphy taught that the subconscious receives this feeling, this subjective sense of completion, as a present tense reality and begins to move toward its outer expression. The longer and more consistently you can sustain this feeling during the moment of impression, the more deeply it is received. But even a single moment of genuine felt acceptance, even 30 seconds of truly meaning it, is worth more than hours of recitation without it. The fourth step is to repeat at threshold moments. Murphy identified specific moments in the daily cycle as possessing far greater suggestive power than ordinary waking consciousness. And the practitioner who understands this has a significant mechanical advantage. The most powerful of these moments are the period just before sleep and the period immediately upon waking. In both cases, the analytical critical faculty, the gatekeeper, is naturally quiet. The mind is at the threshold between conscious activity and the deeper subconscious state. In the moments before sleep, the body is relaxed, the day's activity has ceased, and the mind is drifting toward its own depths. In these moments, a simple, clearly felt statement of truth can sink into the subconscious without resistance, without the critical mind's objection, and with a depth of impression that is genuinely exceptional. Upon waking, the same openness prevails. The conscious mind has not yet fully resumed its analytical activity. The subconscious is still at the surface, still accessible, still receptive in a way it will not be once the full waking mental activity resumes. Murphy recommended using these threshold moments not for long, complex prayer sessions, but for precisely the kind of short, simple, emotionally accepted statements described in steps 2 and 3. One sentence felt genuinely, repeated perhaps 3 to 5 times in a quiet inner voice at the threshold of sleep. This, in Murphy's teaching, is among the most effective acts of subconscious programming available to the ordinary practitioner. It does not require spiritual talent. It does not require years of meditation training. It requires only the knowledge that these moments are mechanically valuable and the discipline to use them deliberately rather than filling them with the anxious review of the day's problems, which is, for most people, the habitual and unconsciously destructive alternative. There is also significant value in using these threshold moments to establish an inner image alongside the verbal statement. Murphy taught that the combination of a clear mental picture and a statement of its emotional truth creates an impression of exceptional depth and durability. As you settle at the edge of sleep, allow yourself to see, however briefly and simply, the inner picture that corresponds to your statement of truth. If the statement is one of financial order, see yourself in a moment of settled sufficiency, not an extravagant fantasy, but a simple, vivid, emotionally real picture of order and supply. If the statement is one of health, feel the body in ease, even for a moment. If the statement is one of guidance, See yourself moving forward with clarity. The picture does not need to be held long. Murphy described the ideal as a brief, vivid, emotionally felt glimpse, and then a releasing of the image into the subconscious, as a gardener places a seed in the soil and then trusts the soil to do its work. Beyond the threshold moments, the practitioner can also use brief moments throughout the day to renew the impression, not as an anxious checking in, but as a natural, calm affirmation of the established inner truth. A moment waiting for coffee, a moment in the car before starting the engine, a moment in the silence between tasks. In each of these brief pauses, the practitioner can return to their one simple statement, take a single, slow breath, and issue the command again from a place of relative calm. Murphy called this living in the consciousness of the answer. Not an obsessive repetition, but a recurring, gentle, felt recognition that the work of the inner mind is operative and that the infinite intelligence is active. Each of these brief renewals adds to the depth of the dominant impression and gradually replaces the habitual emotional tone of anxiety with the habitual emotional tone of settled, operative faith. It is worth noting what this method does not include. It does not include an hour-long morning ritual of affirmations recited at speed. It does not include the desperate, last-minute prayer issued in the face of a crisis with the full force of fear behind it. It does not include the anxious repetition of a long list of desires before bed, while the mind simultaneously rehearses everything that could go wrong. These are the practices of the uninstructed practitioner, not because they are spiritually wrong, but because they are mechanically ineffective. They are applying force to a mechanism that requires permission. They are shouting at a system that requires a quiet signal. The peace impression method, as Murphy's teaching implies and these steps articulate, is the exact opposite of force. It is the application of calm authority to a receptive deep mind at the moments of greatest receptivity with the simplest possible signal of the greatest possible felt truth. The final structural note on this method concerns its integration into life. Murphy was always practical. He was not teaching a practice for monasteries or spiritual retreats. He was teaching a practice for people who had jobs, families, financial pressures, health concerns, and all the ordinary demands of a full human life. He knew that the practitioner could not and should not withdraw from the world for hours each day to practice inner work. He consistently taught that the most effective practice was the disciplined use of small, regular, well-executed moments. The threshold moments, the brief daily renewals, rather than occasional marathon sessions conducted from a place of accumulated urgency. The quality of the impression in any single moment matters far more than the quantity of time invested. A calm, single, genuinely accepted minute of subconscious impression is not a lesser version of an hour of anxious affirmation. It is categorically superior to it, and it is available to every practitioner in every circumstance at every stage of life, beginning from exactly where they are right now. There is a pattern in the experience of the long-term spiritual practitioner that Murphy would have recognized immediately. It is the pattern of the person who knows the law, who has studied it seriously, who applies it consistently, and who nonetheless finds that the law does not seem to apply to them. They see the testimonies of others. They understand the principle. They cannot identify any obvious failure of effort, and yet the outer conditions remain unmoved. This is not random. This is diagnostic. And the diagnosis, in most cases, points not to a deficiency of faith, but to a specific set of mechanical errors that are so common, so widely taught in distorted form, and so easy to make without awareness, that they constitute the primary obstacle between the serious practitioner and the results the law is designed to produce. The first of these errors is one that most practitioners will recognize the moment it is named. It is the error of affirming against panic. When you treat an affirmation as a weapon against a feared condition, when you say, "I am safe because you are afraid," and the primary function of the statement is to defeat the fear, you have fundamentally misunderstood the law. The affirmation in this context is not a positive instruction to the subconscious. It is a record of a battle, and the subconscious, receiving the emotional signature of that battle, the urgency, the fear, the sense of an enemy being fought, does not record the content of the affirmation as the dominant impression. It records the battle itself. It records the threat that made the battle necessary. It receives as its governing signal the fact that something is very wrong and that you are fighting to overcome it. And it produces, with its faithful, impersonal precision, more conditions in which something is very wrong and you are fighting to overcome it. The affirmation has not failed. The law has succeeded perfectly. It has simply executed the actual dominant impression rather than the intended one. Murphy saw this error repeatedly in his counseling practice, and he was direct about its cause. He described many practitioners as using affirmations the way a frightened person uses a flashlight to chase away the dark. Not understanding that the more urgently you swing the light at the darkness, the more your attention is dominated by the darkness you are trying to eliminate. The solution Murphy prescribed was not a stronger affirmation or a more determined effort to fight the fear. It was a redirection of attention away from the problem entirely. He called this turning from the problem to the principle. The instruction is not to deny that the problem exists. It is to stop giving it your attention, your imagination, and your emotional energy. Because whatever you give your concentrated attention and feeling to, you are impressing upon the subconscious, regardless of whether your conscious intention is to affirm it or to deny it. The subconscious does not respond to your intention. It responds to your dominant impression. And if your dominant impression is the vividly felt reality of the problem, your intention to overcome it changes nothing. The second error is one that will be immediately recognizable to anyone who has spent significant time in manifestation-focused spiritual communities. It is the error of changing affirmations constantly. The practitioner tries one statement for a week, finds no outer evidence of change, concludes that the statement is not working, and moves on to a different statement. This cycle repeats indefinitely. Different books, different teachers, different formulations, different approaches, tried, evaluated, and discarded in a continuous search for the technique that will finally produce visible results. Murphy would identify this pattern not as diligence, but as the systematic expression of doubt. Each change of affirmation is a signal to the subconscious. The previous statement was not true, or not sufficient, or not effective. And the subconscious, receiving that signal, records the underlying conviction: nothing is working. No single truth is deep enough or reliable enough to hold. Doubt is the governing pattern, and the subconscious, as always, executes the governing pattern. Murphy understood that deep subconscious impression requires time and repetition. The pattern that is being replaced, the habitual emotional tone of lack, fear, or limitation, was not formed in a week. It was formed over years, often decades, of consistent emotional experience. To replace it, the new impression must be applied with comparable consistency and must be given the time required for the new pattern to establish itself at the level of the dominant impression. Changing affirmations after a week or two because results are not yet visible is the exact equivalent of planting a seed and then digging it up after 3 days to check if it has sprouted. The digging does not accelerate the growth. It destroys what was already beginning to take root. Murphy's instruction was always to select a simple, genuine statement of truth, apply it consistently and from the correct inner state, and then trust the law enough to leave it in the soil. The subconscious will execute it, not on the schedule that panic demands, on the schedule that the law, operating in its own order, produces. The third error is perhaps the most fundamental of all because it is an error of understanding rather than merely an error of technique. It is the error of trying to force belief. This error arises from a sincere but damaging misunderstanding of what Murphy meant by faith. Many practitioners interpret faith as a mental act of sufficient intensity, as if the subconscious could be impressed by forcing yourself to believe something strongly enough. They strain, they push, they try to manufacture certainty about conditions that their current experience contradicts. And when the certainty does not come naturally, they try harder. They push more forcefully against their own doubt. They berate themselves for not believing enough. Murphy described this approach as mental violence. It is the application of conscious force to a process that requires conscious release. The harder you force the belief, the more the conscious critical mind is engaged. And the more the conscious critical mind is engaged, the less access the subconscious has to the impression being attempted. Forcing belief does not bypass the gatekeeper. It activates and strengthens it. Murphy's alternative was what he called gentle saturation. Rather than forcing belief into the subconscious, you allow it to saturate slowly, through repetition, through the threshold moments of sleep and waking, through brief daily renewals, through the gradual shift in the dominant emotional tone of your inner life. Saturation is a process, not an event. It is the gradual replacing of an old pattern with a new one, through consistent, calm, felt application of the new pattern at every available opportunity. There is no force in saturation. There is only consistency, patience, and the trusted operation of the law. The person who saturates the subconscious with a single truth, gently and consistently, for 30 days, from a state of genuine calm, with genuine feeling of acceptance, will find that the dominant impression has genuinely shifted. Not because they forced it to shift, because they gave it what the law requires. Consistent, accepted, emotionally felt impression without the interference of forced certainty. Now there is a specific error, one promised at the beginning of this teaching, that deserves its own precise examination. It is an error so common, so widely practiced, and so hidden in plain sight that most practitioners have never identified it as an error at all. It is this: repeating positive affirmations while internally monitoring whether they are working. Think carefully about the experience this describes. You say the words of your affirmation, and even as you say them, perhaps especially immediately after saying them, there is an inner movement, a checking, a small, quiet question that asks, is it working yet? Is it taking hold? Is there any evidence? Is anything changing? This monitoring impulse feels like discernment. It feels like a responsible assessment of whether the practice is producing results. But in terms of subconscious law, it is a catastrophe, because the act of monitoring for evidence of the affirmation's effectiveness is itself an act of doubt. It is the inner statement, I do not yet know whether this is true. I am checking to see. And the subconscious, receiving that inner statement with all of its felt reality and urgent attention, records it as the dominant impression, doubt, not the affirmed content, doubt. Murphy would say that monitoring for results during the practice of subconscious impression is equivalent to a farmer who plants a seed and then stands over the soil every 30 minutes, digging it up to check whether it has germinated. The seed cannot germinate while it is being constantly dug up and inspected. And the subconscious cannot form a new pattern while the conscious mind is continuously scrutinizing the existing conditions for evidence that the pattern has not yet changed. The monitoring impulse is the death of the impression. It signals to the subconscious that the practitioner does not genuinely believe what they are affirming, because genuine belief does not need to check. Genuine acceptance does not need to verify. The person who has truly accepted the inner truth of their statement rests in that acceptance, trusts the law to execute it, and turns their attention elsewhere with a settled confidence of someone who has placed an order with a reliable supplier and has no doubt that it will arrive. This is the quality of faith that Murphy described. This is the inner posture that allows the law to function without interference. The master's instruction for navigating all of these errors returns always to the same principle: simplicity combined with emotional acceptance. Murphy consistently recommended short statements, the shorter the better, delivered with genuine felt meaning rather than intellectual recitation. He pointed frequently to statements of ancient spiritual brevity. It is done. God guides me. I am at peace. Divine intelligence knows the way. These statements are not simplistic. They are precise. They do not engage the analytical mind in theological debate. They do not provoke the gatekeeper to evaluate their logical coherence. They sink in their simplicity beneath the level of analysis and land at the level of felt truth. They require no forcing. They require only the willingness to say them from a place of genuine inner quiet, with a settled feeling that they are already and always true, and then to release them into the subconscious soil without monitoring, without doubt, without the exhausting self-supervision of a mind that does not yet trust the law enough to leave the seed in the ground. The practitioner who addresses these errors, who stops fighting the problem with their affirmations, who selects one simple statement and stays with it, who releases the grip of forced certainty and enters instead the state of gentle saturation, and who learns to issue their inner command without immediately checking for evidence that it was received, will find that the entire character of their practice changes. The exhaustion lifts. The sense of internal combat dissolves. The practice becomes not a battle but a communion, a quiet, authoritative, regular conversation with the deep mind conducted from a place of increasing inner stability. And the subconscious, receiving at last the clear, consistent, emotionally accepted signal it has always been designed to receive, begins to produce in the outer world what the inner world has genuinely established. Not as magic, not as miracle, though it may feel like both. As law, as the faithful, impersonal, mathematically precise execution of what is impressed upon the deep mind from the state of operative, commanded, sovereign peace. The promise made in the opening of this teaching was specific. It was the promise of a hidden error, not a general warning about positive thinking, but a precise identification of a particular practice that many serious practitioners use with the sincere belief that it is productive, when in fact it is doing the opposite of what they intend. That error has now been revealed. In understanding why it functions as it does, why monitoring during affirmation teaches the subconscious doubt rather than faith, is the key that unlocks the diagnostic picture of why so many experienced practitioners find themselves in the position of knowing the law and yet not living its results. Let the logic be stated once more with absolute clarity, because this specific error is worth understanding at the deepest level available. When you affirm a truth and simultaneously check whether it is yet manifesting, you are performing two competing inner acts simultaneously. The first act is the affirmation, a statement of a desired spiritual truth. The second act is the checking, an inquiry into whether the present reality confirms or contradicts that truth. The first act is the impression you intend to give the subconscious. The second act is the impression you are actually giving it, because the second act is emotionally far more vivid, far more urgent, and far more consistent than the first. The checking behavior, repeated every time you affirm, trains the subconscious in a single powerful lesson. The truth of what I am affirming is uncertain. And the subconscious, executing this lesson with its characteristic faithfulness, produces the outer experience of uncertainty, inconsistency, and the maddening sense that the law is almost but never quite working. Murphy's alternative to this pattern was what he called the prayer of already. Not the prayer of wanting, not the prayer of trying to become convinced, the prayer of already. The inner act of resting in the truth as already established, as done, as complete, as already operative in the substance of mind even before it is visible in the substance of matter. This is not a claim about the outer world. It is a precise inner act. It is the deliberate, cultivated, emotionally felt recognition that at the level of subconscious law, the thing is already moved, already set in motion, already given. And from this recognition, not from effort, not from straining, not from checking, the practitioner simply rests and trusts the law to bring the inner reality into outer expression in its own perfect order. Murphy did not teach blind passivity. He was clear that inspired action would arise and must be taken. But the source of that action was to be the inner knowing of completion, not the outer anxiety of lack. The specific short statements that Murphy pointed to repeatedly deserve careful attention because they are not merely convenient examples. They represent a precise philosophy of language in relation to subconscious law. Consider the statement, "It is done." 3 words. No complexity, no elaboration, no description of the specific condition desired. Yet in its brevity, it contains the entire operating principle of subconscious prayer, the felt sense of completion. When you say it is done from a place of genuine inner calm, and you allow even a brief feeling of settled finality to accompany those words, you are giving the subconscious an impression of completion, an impression that, by the law Murphy taught, the subconscious will move to express externally. The statement does not need to specify what is done. The subconscious already knows the context. It knows what you have been working with, what you have been praying for, what area of life you are addressing. The short statement is not a limitation, it is a precision tool. Consider also the statement, God guides me. This statement, in Murphy's framework, is not a hope. It is not an aspiration. It is a declaration of present operative fact. God, or infinite intelligence, or the deep wisdom that Murphy understood as operative within the subconscious itself, is guiding you. Now, in this situation, by this principle, the statement acknowledges the presence of a directing intelligence that is more informed than the fearful conscious mind, and it claims that intelligence is currently active. When this is said from a place of genuine inner quiet, not shouted against fear, but spoken from the authority of calm, it impresses upon the subconscious the reality of intelligent guidance, and the subconscious, receiving this impression, begins to produce in the outer experience the evidence of intelligent guidance, the clearer decision, the timely encounter, the unexpected opening, the thought that arrives in the night with the precision of an answer. The statement, I am at peace, deserves special attention in this context because it is not merely one affirmation among many. In Murphy's teaching, peace is itself a condition of spiritual law, the condition in which infinite intelligence operates most freely through the individual. When you affirm peace from a genuine place of even partial inner stillness, you are not only impressing a desired emotional condition, you are creating the condition of your own greatest receptivity. You are, in the act of affirming peace with feeling, moving toward the state that makes all other affirmations most effective. This makes I am at peace something close to a master affirmation, one that creates the conditions for all other impressions to be received more deeply. And finally, a divine intelligence knows the way is the statement of complete trust in the operative intelligence of the subconscious and its connection to the universal mind. It is the inner act of releasing the anxious, controlling impulse of the conscious mind, which always believes it must figure everything out, and placing the navigation in the hands of the deeper intelligence that Murphy was certain was not only real, but continuously active, continuously willing, and continuously capable of producing the outer conditions that align with the inner impression it has received. These statements are not alternatives to deep understanding. They are applications of it. They represent the distillation of Murphy's entire teaching into the simplest possible operative forms. Forms that, when used from the correct inner state, carry the full weight of the law behind them. The practitioner who chooses one of these statements, or one equally simple and genuinely felt, and who applies it consistently from the state of peace at the threshold moments of sleep and waking, without monitoring, without forcing, without changing, that practitioner is operating the subconscious law as Murphy actually taught it, and the result, over time, will not be the dramatic overnight transformation that panic demands. It will be something more durable, more real, and more reflective of the law's actual operation. A gradual, consistent, deepening shift in the dominant inner pattern, and following that shift as effect follows cause, a gradual, consistent, deepening change in the visible conditions of life. What Murphy taught about the relationship between the inner state and the outer condition finds a compelling parallel in what modern understanding of the nervous system reveals about the relationship between physiological state and mental receptivity. This parallel is not presented here as scientific proof of Murphy's teaching. The teaching stands or falls on its own internal logic and on the evidence of its application. But it is presented as a useful explanatory framework that can deepen the practitioner's understanding of why the relaxed state is mechanically, not just spiritually, superior as a condition for new mental impression. The human nervous system operates, in broad terms, in two primary modes. The first is a state of activation, what might be called the alert or threat response state, in which the body mobilizes resources for rapid action, perception narrows to focus on immediate threats, and the mind enters a mode of scanning, evaluating, and preparing for danger. In this state, learning is inhibited, receptivity to new patterns is reduced, and the mind's tendency is to reinforce existing beliefs and expectations rather than to receive new ones. This is by design. In a situation of genuine physical threat, the last thing the organism needs is to be considering new philosophical perspectives. It needs to execute known responses quickly. The alert state is optimized for survival under known conditions, not for the reception of new impressions that would change those conditions. The second mode is a state of rest and receptivity, the condition of relative calm in which the body is at ease. The breath is slower and deeper. The scanning function of threat detection quiets, and the mind becomes genuinely open to new information and new patterns of response. In this state, learning is enhanced, new associations are formed more readily, and the mind is able to consider possibilities that the alert state would screen out as irrelevant to immediate survival. Crucially, in this state, the suggestive power of ideas presented to the mind is significantly increased. The mind in a calm, receptive state is more likely to genuinely accept new information, to allow it to sink in, to feel its reality, to begin reorganizing its existing patterns around the new truth, than the mind in a state of threat activation. Murphy understood this distinction, even if he expressed it in the language of his era rather than the language of contemporary physiology. When he described the importance of relaxation before subconscious work, he was describing the operational requirement of moving the mind out of its threat scanning mode and into its receptive mode. When he described the threshold of sleep as the optimal moment for subconscious impression, he was identifying the physiological moment at which the alert state naturally dissolves and the receptive state naturally prevails. When he prescribed slow breathing, deliberate physical relaxation, and the quiet settling of the inner atmosphere before any affirmative work, he was outlining a specific physiological protocol for creating the conditions of genuine mental receptivity. His language was spiritual. The mechanism he was describing was also physiological. And the convergence of the two framings is not coincidental. It reflects the fact that the spiritual law and the physiological reality are two descriptions of the same underlying phenomenon. This parallel also illuminates the error of anxious affirmation with particular clarity. The person who recites affirmations from a state of acute anxiety is operating in the alert, threat scanning mode. Their nervous system is in the condition most associated with reinforcing existing patterns rather than receiving new ones. The new affirmation, no matter how carefully selected, is being presented to a mind that is physiologically optimized to reject it, because the pattern it is designed to replace is precisely the pattern that the threat-scanning mind is using to evaluate every new input. The existing belief in the problem, in the threat, in the insufficiency, is the frame through which the alert mind assesses all incoming information. The affirmation arrives. The alert mind evaluates it against the existing frame. The existing frame wins, because the alert mind is designed to prioritize existing survival patterns. The affirmation is registered, assessed, and categorized as unproven. The pattern of limitation is reinforced. Move that same practitioner into a genuine state of calm, slower breath, relaxed body, quieter inner atmosphere, and the receptivity changes. The same affirmation delivered to a mind in this state does not encounter the same filtering mechanism in the same activated form. The mind in a calm state can consider the new truth on its own terms. It can allow the feeling of the affirmation to settle, however briefly, without the immediate counter-argument of threat pattern activation. This is the moment at which genuine new impression becomes possible. This is the moment Murphy was teaching the practitioner to create deliberately and to use with precision, not because it is a pleasant experience, though it often is, because it is the physiological and psychological condition under which the subconscious can actually receive the new pattern and begin the process of expressing it. There is also a dimension of this that relates specifically to the imagination, which Murphy, following Quay and many others, considered the primary language of the subconscious. In the alert, threat-activated state, the imagination operates under the influence of fear. It generates spontaneously the images most consistent with threat, images of failure, of loss, of the feared outcome materializing. These images are not a deliberate product of the practitioner's intention. They are the automatic output of a nervous system in alert mode, the visual representation of the threat scanning function. And as Murphy understood, these images, generated automatically and felt with the vividness of genuine fear, constitute some of the most powerful impressions the subconscious ever receives. They are felt as real, they are vivid, they are repeated. They are the dominant imaginative experience of the anxious practitioner, and the subconscious executes them with its characteristic faithfulness. In the state of genuine calm, the imagination operates differently. It becomes available for deliberate direction. The practitioner who is genuinely at ease, even briefly, even imperfectly, can hold a chosen inner image without the immediate displacement of that image by the automatic fear pictures of the activated nervous system. They can allow the image of sufficiency, of health, of order, to remain present in the inner space long enough to be felt, to be accepted, to constitute a genuine impression rather than a fleeting aspiration immediately overwritten by the fear images of the alert state. This is why Murphy's teaching on imagination is inseparable from his teaching on the relaxed state. You cannot effectively work with the imagination in a state of acute anxiety because the anxiety is already using the imagination for its own purposes, and its use is constant, vivid, and dominant. Calm the anxiety and the imagination becomes available. Direct it from that calm toward a clear, simple, felt picture of truth, and you have created the conditions for one of the most powerful impressions the subconscious can receive. The connection to what we understand about how deeply held beliefs form and change is equally relevant. Every practitioner who has struggled with an entrenched belief, a deep conviction of unworthiness or of chronic lack or of inevitable ill health, understands that simply deciding to believe differently does not change the deep pattern. The deep pattern was formed not by a single decision, but by a long accumulation of emotionally charged experiences that were accepted, however unconsciously, as defining truths. To change a deep pattern, what is required is not the intellectual assertion of the opposite truth, but the repeated, emotionally accepted, genuinely felt experience of the new truth, experienced with enough consistency and depth that it gradually becomes the new dominant pattern. This is exactly the process Murphy was describing. It is a process of gradual saturation conducted in the state of maximum receptivity with the simplest possible signals of the new truth. And it is a process that requires patience, not because the law is slow, but because the depth of the old impression means that the new impression must be consistently applied until it has saturated to the same depth as the one it is replacing. None of this suggests that outer action is irrelevant. Murphy was never a teacher of passive waiting. He consistently described the subconscious as the source of inspired, intelligent action, the kind of clear, well-timed, precisely directed action that arises when the inner mind is operating from faith rather than fear. The difference between the action of the anxious practitioner and the action of the practitioner whose subconscious is impressed with order and guidance is qualitative. The anxious practitioner acts from urgency, often in multiple directions simultaneously, often contradicting their previous actions, and often generating further conditions of chaos and exhaustion. The practitioner whose subconscious is impressed with peace and intelligent order acts from a different source. From the intuitive promptings, the clear inner knowing, the well-timed impulse that is the subconscious mind's way of producing outer conditions that match the inner impression. This inspired action is not less decisive than anxious action. It is more precise. It is directed by an intelligence that sees further and knows more than the conscious mind ever can. And it is available only to the practitioner who has learned to be still enough to hear it. Consider the following illustration drawn directly from the pattern Murphy described in his counseling work. A man in his mid-50s, an intelligent, spiritually educated man who had been studying this science for over a decade, found himself in a genuinely difficult financial position. He understood the subconscious. He had read the books. He knew the theory of impression and dominance and the law of belief, and he had been applying it with considerable dedication. Every morning he recited a list of money affirmations, 15 statements of abundance, recited rapidly and repeatedly with all the emotional force he could generate. And every evening, almost compulsively, he reviewed his bank statements, his outstanding bills, and the gap between what he affirmed and what he saw. He would finish his evening review in a state of heightened anxiety, then go to bed and replay the numbers in his mind until sleep finally came out of exhaustion. For 2 years, he continued this practice. And for 2 years, nothing changed in any meaningful way. The affirmations were not working, or so it appeared. What was actually happening, of course, was that the affirmations were working perfectly, working to record with perfect fidelity the dominant impression that this man was actually giving his subconscious, which was not abundance. It was the vivid, emotionally charged, repeatedly rehearsed reality of financial threat. The 15 morning affirmations lasted perhaps 15 minutes. The evening review of shortage, the nighttime mental rehearsal of the problem, and the habitual background hum of financial anxiety lasted the other 23 hours and 45 minutes of each day. That was the dominant impression. And the subconscious, as always, executed the dominant impression. A shift came not through finding better affirmations, but through a change in method. Someone who understood Murphy's actual teaching suggested that he set aside the long list entirely. No more 15 statements, no more emotionally forced abundance mantras. One sentence only, 4 words. Infinite intelligence supplies me. He was instructed to say this sentence once, at the edge of sleep. After lying down, taking 3 slow breaths, deliberately releasing the tension in his body, and allowing the day's anxiety to settle. Then from that quiet, he was to say the 4 words slowly, allow whatever small feeling of relief or acceptance arose naturally, and then release it. Not check it, not evaluate it, not monitor it for evidence. Simply allow it to be the last impression of the conscious mind before sleep took over. He was also instructed to stop the nightly bill review entirely, not to avoid knowing his financial situation, but to stop using the evening hours as a rehearsal of the problem. Murphy understood that the threshold of sleep is among the most powerful moments for subconscious impression, for good or ill. To spend that threshold in anxious review of the condition of lack was to use the most powerful moment of subconscious receptivity in the service of the pattern he was trying to change. Stopping the review was not denial. It was the refusal to keep planting the same seed at the most fertile moment of the planting cycle. Over a period of weeks, something began to shift. Not dramatically, not with any single external event that could be pointed to as the breakthrough. The shift was internal and gradual. He noticed that his thinking about the financial situation was becoming clearer. Decisions that had felt paralyzed began to feel more navigable. A sense of quiet confidence, not rooted in any changed external fact, began to replace the constant background hum of anxiety. He began sleeping more fully. The obsessive nightly review, which he had always believed was responsible financial management, had actually been the primary mechanism of his own limitation. And its removal allowed the subconscious, for the first time in years, to receive the new impression without the immediate overriding of the old. What followed, over the months after this shift, was a series of developments that Murphy would have described as the natural outer expression of a changed inner pattern. Not magic, not coincidence, though it might appear so to an observer who did not understand the law. A contact unexpectedly renewed, a professional opportunity that had been dormant for years re-emerged at precisely the moment when the inner state was aligned to receive it. A decision about a financial matter, made from a place of unexpected clarity rather than the usual panic, produced results that the panicked decisions of the previous 2 years had never achieved. None of this arrived on the schedule that his urgency had demanded. All of it arrived in the order that the law, operating through a correctly impressed subconscious, naturally produced. And the change that made all of it possible was not a new affirmation or a new technique. It was a change in the state from which the subconscious was approached. From panic to peace, from frantic repetition to single, calm, accepted impression. From the anxiety of wanting to the quiet authority of claiming. The practical contrast at the center of this entire teaching can be stated in 2 sentences. The panic command says, "I need this now or I am lost." The peace command says, "Divine order is active in my life, and I am guided step by step." These are not merely different words describing the same inner state. They are expressions of entirely different states, each of which produces an entirely different subconscious impression, each of which the subconscious executes with its impersonal fidelity to what it receives as dominant. The panic command impresses urgency, threat, insufficiency, and the terrifying imminence of loss. The subconscious executes conditions of urgency, threat, insufficiency, and the felt imminence of loss. The peace command impresses order, guidance, sufficiency, and the reliable operation of a principle that knows the way. The subconscious executes conditions of order, guidance, and the gradual emergence of the path forward. The difference between the two lives lived under these two different commands is not theoretical. It is visible. It is measurable. It is the precise, faithful, impersonal reflection of what has been impressed upon the deep mind. This is not poetry. This is law. Everything that has been established in this teaching converges on a single principle that, once understood at its full depth, changes the entire relationship between the practitioner and the subconscious mind. The subconscious is not impressed by volume. It is not impressed by the intensity of your desire, the duration of your effort, the elaborateness of your technique, or the sincerity of your desperation. It is impressed by accepted feeling, by the quality of inner state from which the instruction is issued, by the depth of felt completion that accompanies the simple declaration of truth, and the single condition that makes accepted feeling possible, the operating environment without which the impression cannot penetrate to the depth required for genuine outer change, is the state of operative, cultivated, sovereign inner peace. This is not a comfortable teaching for the person in the middle of a crisis, and it should not be made comfortable by softening it. The truth is demanding. At precisely the moment when circumstances are most threatening, when the pressure is greatest and the evidence against the desired outcome is most vivid, at exactly that moment, the law requires you to be still, to withdraw your attention from the evidence of the condition, to establish from within the inner state that corresponds to the truth you are claiming, not to the condition you are experiencing. This is the discipline of the practitioner who has genuinely understood Murphy's teaching. It is a discipline that is difficult. It is also a discipline that is the only leverage available, because the outer condition can only change by a change in the inner pattern. And the inner pattern can only change by a new dominant impression. And a new dominant impression can only be received when the signal environment of the subconscious is the signal environment of peace rather than panic. It follows that the transformation available through this science is not merely a change in outer circumstances, though such change is what Murphy consistently described as the natural result of correctly applied subconscious law. The deeper transformation is a change in the practitioner themselves, a change in their relationship to their own inner authority. The person who has genuinely learned to enter the state of peace under pressure, to issue clear and simple commands to the subconscious from that state, and to trust the law enough to release those commands without monitoring or manipulation, that person has undergone a fundamental shift in their experience of themselves. They have discovered that they are not a passive recipient of outer conditions, helplessly reacting to what life presents. They are the operator of the law. They are the cause, not merely the effect. And this discovery, once made and lived in, is irreversible. It does not make life without difficulty, but it changes the quality of one's presence within difficulty, from victim to operator, from panic to command, from the exhausting effort of trying to force the good to happen, to the authoritative calm of knowing that the law is operative, that the impression has been given, and that the good is already on its way. The synthesis can be stated simply. Murphy's complete teaching on the subconscious mind is, at its core, the teaching of an inner technology that requires a specific operating environment. That environment is peace, not the peace that passeth all understanding as an abstract spiritual ideal, but the peace that is cultivated deliberately, entered methodically, and used as the precise instrument of subconscious command. The tools are simple: one clear statement, one feeling of completion, one moment of genuine acceptance, repeated at the threshold of sleep and the threshold of waking, without monitoring, without forcing, without the frantic urgency of a mind that does not yet trust the law. This is the complete operating instruction, and it produces, with the mathematical certainty of a natural law, the outer expression of the inner pattern it establishes. The full authority of this teaching rests ultimately not on the words of any teacher, however great, and not on the parallels of any science, however relevant. It rests on the law itself. The law is impersonal, and its impersonality is its greatest gift. It does not withhold from you because you have failed before. It does not remember your history of anxious affirmation. It does not carry a record of the times you monitored and doubted and changed your statements and forced your belief. It begins with complete freshness from the next impression it receives. This means that the practitioner who has spent years operating the law incorrectly has lost nothing that cannot be reclaimed. The subconscious soil is still fertile. The law is still operative. The gatekeeper can still be quieted. The seed of truth can still be planted at the threshold of sleep tonight, from a place of genuine inner peace, with the simple felt acceptance that it is already and always true. And the deep mind will receive it as it has always received every impression, with faithful, impersonal precision, and will move as it has always moved toward its expression in the visible world. You do not need to scream at your subconscious. You never did. The desperation that has characterized your practice was never a requirement of the law. It was a misunderstanding of it, a misunderstanding that is now, in this moment, corrected. What the deep mind has always been waiting for, what it has always been designed to receive, is not the noise of your need, but the quiet certainty of your knowing. The state of peace is not a spiritual achievement reserved for monks and masters. It is the operating posture of any practitioner who understands the mechanism. And you understand it now. Consider what this means practically for the practitioner who has carried the weight of years of earnest effort without the results the effort seemed to promise. It means that the effort was not wasted, but that it has been misdirected. The sincerity was always genuine. The dedication was always real. What was missing was not more of the same, but a different quality of approach, a quieter approach, a more precise approach, one that does not fight the problem but rises above it, one that does not shout the answer but speaks it from the throne of inner authority. That throne has always been available to you. It is available now. It is the state of genuine inner peace, entered deliberately, used as an instrument, and sustained long enough for the deep mind to receive the clear, simple, emotionally accepted instruction that will change the dominant pattern, and, with it, the dominant experience of your life. There is something else that Murphy understood that is essential to name in this closing teaching. He understood that the practitioner who has genuinely entered the correct operating state, who has, even once, experienced what it means to approach the subconscious from genuine peace rather than panic, will never be the same. Because that single experience is its own form of impression. It impresses upon the subconscious and upon the conscious mind a new understanding of what is possible. It reveals experientially rather than theoretically that inner peace is not passive and that the state of calm authority is more powerful than the state of frantic urgency. And once that has been felt, even briefly, the practitioner carries a new reference point, a new understanding of their own inner capacity, a new relationship with the law that is available within them. Murphy also spoke often of what he called the joy of answered prayer, not as an emotional reaction to outer change, but as an inner state that arises when the subconscious is correctly approached and the practitioner feels at the level of accepted impression that the work is done. This inner joy is not manufactured. It is the natural emotional accompaniment of genuine subconscious acceptance, the felt sense of completion that is both the instrument of impression and the evidence of genuine inner faith. And once this joy is known, once the practitioner has experienced the difference between the tight, strained, monitoring anxiety of forced affirmation and the quiet, settled, complete sense of having given the deep mind what it needs, the practice itself becomes something entirely different. It becomes not a labor, but a privilege, not a battle, but a communion, not the exhausting effort of trying to override the subconscious with willpower, but the natural, authoritative, peaceful exercise of the practitioner's role as the operator of the law. This is the full dimension of what Murphy was teaching, not merely a set of techniques for improving outer conditions, though the techniques are real and the outer improvements are genuine. He was teaching a complete inner technology for the transformation of the practitioner's relationship with themselves, with their own deep mind, and with the infinite intelligence that operates through that deep mind. And the central operating principle of that technology, the principle without which none of the techniques produce their full result, is peace. Not as an end, as a beginning, as the first act, as the correct signal, as the state from which the command is issued and the law is set in motion. You are not a passive recipient of whatever the subconscious happens to be expressing from its accumulated pattern of past impressions. You are the operator. You are the one who determines the dominant impression. You are the one who chooses the state from which the instruction is given. You are the one who decides whether the deep mind receives the signal of panic or the signal of peace. And in making that choice, in the deliberate, practiced, increasingly natural act of choosing peace as your operating state, you are not merely changing your spiritual practice. You are changing the fundamental nature of what you are giving the law to work with. You are handing it a clear signal in the place of a confused one, a calm command in the place of a panicked noise. And the law, which has always been operative, which has always been working, which has never for a single moment stopped receiving and executing whatever you gave it, that law will receive your clear signal and execute it with the same faithful, impersonal, mathematical precision with which it has always operated. Only now, for the first time, it will be executing what you actually intend. This is not the beginning of something foreign or difficult. It is the return to what has always been true about you. Before the years of anxious effort, before the accumulated disappointments, before the private question of whether the law applies to you, before all of that, there was in you a capacity for inner stillness, a natural access to the deeper level of your own mind that was always there and has never been destroyed, regardless of what experience has accumulated over it. This teaching is not adding anything new. It is removing what was interfering. It is restoring access to the operating posture that was always yours by nature and by law. The peace that is the correct command state is not something you must achieve from a distance. It is something you must allow to emerge from within, and then use with precision as the instrument of the most powerful force available to any human being. The correctly impressed subconscious mind, aligned with infinite intelligence, operating through the simple, faithful, irresistible mechanism of law. The challenge being issued now is specific and practical, and its simplicity is deliberate. For 7 consecutive nights beginning tonight, do the following. Before you reach for your phone, before you review the unresolved concerns of the day, before you rehearse the problems of tomorrow, lie down and take 3 slow, deliberate breaths. With each breath, release tension from one part of the body, the chest, the shoulders, the jaw. Allow the day's noise to settle, even partially, even imperfectly. You do not need to achieve deep meditation. You need only to shift from the full activation of the anxious waking mind to a slightly quieter, more open inner state. That shift, however small, is sufficient for what follows. From that quieter state, choose one sentence of faith, one simple, clear, genuinely felt statement of spiritual truth. It may be, infinite intelligence guides and supplies me. It may be, divine order is active in my life. It may be, it is done. Choose one and stay with it for all 7 nights. Do not change it. Do not evaluate it after the first night and decide it is not working. Do not monitor. Do not check. Simply say it slowly from the quiet you have entered, and allow whatever feeling of relief or acceptance arises naturally to accompany the words. Then release it. Do not hold it. Do not repeat it compulsively. Say it once or twice with genuine felt acceptance, and then allow sleep to carry it into the subconscious. Trust the law to do what the law does. Trust the soil to germinate the seed. Trust the deep mind to receive the impression and begin its work. At the end of 7 nights, you will not necessarily see dramatic external change. Murphy was honest about this. The law does not operate on the schedule of urgency, but you will notice something else. Something that is, in many ways, more significant than any single outer change. You will notice that the quality of your inner state has shifted, that the anxious monitoring has quieted slightly, that the sense of operating from within rather than being controlled from without has increased, that your relationship with the law itself has changed, from that of a desperate petitioner to that of a calm, informed, confident operator. That shift in inner state is not the preliminary to the work. It is the work. It is the change in the dominant impression, and from that change, everything else follows, as it always has and always will, by the faithful and impersonal operation of the law. If this teaching has named a mechanism that you have lived under for years without having a precise language for it, if it has identified, with the specificity of a diagnosis, rather than the vagueness of inspiration, exactly why the gap between your understanding and your experience has persisted, then mark that recognition. Not for this channel, but for your own mind. The circuit of recognition strengthens the impression. Press the acknowledgement that this names something real, and let that acknowledgement be a signal to your subconscious that you are operating at this level of precision from this moment forward. And if this curriculum of subconscious law, prayer, and spiritual precision is the level of understanding you have been seeking, if you sense that what is taught here is building something systematic rather than offering isolated inspiration, then subscribe to this laboratory of sacred logic, not as a casual subscription, as a declaration, as a signal to your own deep mind that you have chosen the curriculum of precision over the noise of shallow motivation. Before you leave this space, there is one final act available to you, one that will seal this understanding more permanently than any note you could take or any summary you could write. Think of one specific moment in your own life, not a general pattern, but one precise moment, when the law of subconscious impression was already operating through you, for you or against you, whether you understood it at the time or not. A moment when you were in a state of genuine peace and something opened. A moment when panic was running the show and the outer conditions faithfully reflected it. A moment when you accepted something deeply and it appeared. A moment when you feared something deeply and it also appeared. Write that moment in the comments below. Not for the channel, not as a testimonial, for yourself. Because the mind that can identify the law in its own history has just acquired the most important thing a practitioner can possess: the capacity to recognize the law in operation. And the mind that can recognize the law in operation has already begun to operate it consciously. That recognition is not the end of something. It is the precise beginning of mastery.